Welcome to Coding Koans, where together we'll explore the world of software development, get better jobs, and change the world. My name's Ian Carroll, and I'm a software developer. With me today is another software developer. Kirk Chu is a front-end developer working primarily in JavaScript, and also a member of the LA meetup scene a few years ago, and I met him there. And also, yeah, he's been all over the place. Right now he's in Taiwan. Welcome, Kirk Chu. Go ahead and start your video. Hey,
Hey
Kirk.
Ian, how's it going?
Going pretty good. So you're in Taipei right now.
I'm in Taipei. Yeah.
Wow. It's funny because the sun is just setting over here, and it looks like it's just rising where you are.
Yeah, it is kind of strange.
So,
It kind
cool. So you work primarily on the front end. Can you tell people what the front end of software development is?
yeah. Um, I'm basically build out the UI portion of the web applications,
The user interface.
the user interfaces.
Okay, cool.
Yep. So it's kind of like what the user interacts with, such as buttons, lists, and um, other things like styling and
Styling, forms.
forms. Forms are a big one.
Yeah.
And build out those aspects of the app.
Okay, so like when someone goes to a web page, let's say it's Facebook, the front end would be all the things that they see, right? And the forms and behavior of like if there's a button over here, you're the one who places where that button is, make sure it's the color that it's going to be, make sure it's the size it's going to be, make sure that when you click it, it does the thing that someone would expect it to do, right?
Right.
Cool.
And yeah, pretty much it. And also stuff like modals popping up and
Okay.
error showing up.
Right. Although hopefully it gracefully handles errors that the user doesn't need to know about. But if they don't put in their zip code the right way, it'll let them know, hey, that's not a valid zip code.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. So you work with JavaScript as the language that you use, and why is it mostly JavaScript on the front end as far as languages go?
I think it's because the browser runs on JavaScript, and um, yeah, most of the code on the web is JavaScript, I would say. Correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, definitely for the front end, JavaScript is the thing. You can there are ways to get other languages on the front end using things like WebAssembly, but that's really new.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Actually, we were just talking before the stream about this language called Rust. And funny enough, you can actually use WebAssembly to inject Rust code into the front end, along with C or Python or really anything else. You can use WebAssembly to sort of, as long as you can package it up as a binary, then you can put that into the WebAssembly and use that to tack it onto the front end.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see. Like a compiler that compiles it to JavaScript.
It attaches itself to the DOM, to the document object model. That's the it's oh man, how to describe the DOM? It's basically your browser. It's how programs and programming languages interact with the browser, whether you're using um, Chrome or Safari or Edge or God help you, Internet Explorer. Um, they all that's how those are put together. But yeah, you can do that. Although you really shouldn't unless you really, really want to. I mean, after all, other people need to work with the code as well, and there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. JavaScript works in so many places. It's a very, very useful language.
That's true. Yeah.
So,
I have to look into WebAssembly. That sounds kind of
oh yeah, it's cool.
pretty
I haven't
interesting.
really touched it yet, but it looks very promising. Yeah. So do you work like primarily like straight with JavaScript, or do you like work with uh, frameworks that are built on top of JavaScript?
Yeah. Primarily, I guess frameworks on top of JavaScript. Mainly using React right
Yeah.
now. And yeah, I would just say I've been mainly using React.
Hmm. Yeah, it's the framework of choice right now, as far as I can tell. I've been using a lot of React myself when I'm working on the front end. Although I don't think I have the depth of experience that you do when it comes to the front end. It's something that I touch when I need to, rather than my bread and butter.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do you do full stack work?
Yeah. Uh, Whatever, I work in a consultancy, so like every client has different needs. So yeah, whatever those needs are, those are the ones. Um,
Do you get to choose which? I guess you get to choose which language best suits the client or best tools.
Yeah, sometimes it depends. Like sometimes what we're working with is the client has already chosen a language, or that the language is one that is based off of just tradition from their point of view. So I've worked besides JavaScript. Let's see, C Sharp, lots of Ruby. Elixir, Clojure. I did a little bit of Clojure.
Clojure's cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm missing a few others. Um, I end up doing a lot of Python on my own, but I rarely actually get to touch Python code in production. Um, but yeah, lots of different things.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and Java. But
Oh,
yeah,
Java.
front
Yeah.
end, back end. Yeah, I do a little bit of everything, and I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none.
I like that.
Yeah. So, you were in the meetup scene in LA a few years back, and that's where I met you. We're doing something called Full Stack LA. Do you want to talk about how did you get involved with Tech Meetups, and why?
That's a good question. I think I was looking to transition. I used to careers. I used to be I actually taught English in Shanghai. Um, before before I moved back to LA, I was at Shanghai and I taught English. And I wanted to transition into more of a STEM role. So I kind of wanted to be an engineer.
So you wanted to
But
teach engineering. Is that what I'm hearing?
I wanted to work in the field.
Oh, okay, cool.
And you need like a degree to do that. Like I wanted to work for like JPL or um, like NASA or something,
Yeah.
and you need a degree to do that. And I wasn't really ready to commit to that. So I heard about these boot camps earlier, and researched them a little bit, and then found out there were these meetups that you can go and meet people who were uh, working on programming and studying programming, and I thought that'd be a good intro to get into it. And so I started going to Learn Teach Code LA,
Okay.
and that was that first meetup was a scary experience because I felt like such an imposter to be there.
Right.
But they were super welcoming and super nice, and gradually I went to more and more, and I felt like I could really learn this on my own after a few meetups, especially with that support group that you get from the meetup groups.
Yeah. Yeah, I felt that too. I think I might have when I came along, I saw you at like most of the meetups that I went to. You were at Jen Diamond's Ruby meetup. You were at Full Stack LA. I think you might have been at Hack for LA too.
Oh yeah, Hack for
Yeah.
LA. Yeah,
Yeah, and each of those meetups has like a different sort of theme to it, but all of them were learning software and trying to do something. Hack for LA is really cool because that one you show up and you work on civic projects for the city of LA. So it's things that will benefit the community, and you're helping to benefit the community by writing code that then will become, some sort of useful app for someone in the city, and it's a great way to learn too. But yeah,
that's true.
but I would see you at all of them, and I was new, and I felt like an imposter, and I was showing up because I knew I was an imposter. I was just trying to learn, so I was just daring to show up, and that was pretty much it. And I would see you at every one. I was like, wow, that guy's really got it going. He really I see him everywhere. He's he must be a really advanced developer.
Yeah, that's like totally the opposite of the actual fact. And I think 90% like the difficulty of like going to these things, what was the imposter feeling, and overcoming that, and just once you're there, you just feel like um, everything's good now, and you can start learning.
Yeah, yeah, and that is one thing is I found like there weren't any like when I was there at least. I don't know what it's like now, but when I was there was not very much gatekeeping going on. There wasn't like, oh, you don't understand what a function is. Oh, well, I don't know why you're here. Uh, like, why aren't you using a for loop? Why are you using a while loop here? Um, you know, I didn't see very much of that, and it was just filled with people who a wanted to learn or b wanted to help people learn. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah, I felt like we had pretty good like events in LA that
yeah,
were pretty welcoming.
and
Um,
then we all got jobs and stopped going because we were too busy.
yep, that's kind of how it goes, fortunately.
Well, but yeah, that is so cool that you can like. I mean, besides going to a boot camp and spending a bunch of money and having someone train you and go through like this regimented program, you can also, or all by itself, go to these meetups and learn yourself and just learn from doing and being around other people. Uh, yeah.
Yeah, I kind of felt like it was an experiment too. Like what we were doing at the time was kind of really unorthodox because it was just learning it through like clubs really, and not through any like formal education, and not through like something paid, like a paid course, like a teacher teaching you,
Right,
but
and
just
no certificate at the end of it.
yeah. and so it was a little risky too, but I felt like it was a cool experience to go through
Well, as
and
somebody,
to have.
yeah, as somebody who was working at Barnes and Noble and made $13 an hour, the price was right. I couldn't afford anything else. There was no other way I could have done it. Um,
Oh
and
yeah.
it was really interesting seeing the fact that there would be recruiters who would stop by these meetups too. Who would just, sort of be checking in on us every once in a while, or like, the companies that would host the meetup, like where it was, its physical space was oftentimes at a tech company's office, and there would be a developer or two or somebody who worked at the office there to answer questions for us also, which is, it was great because we could learn exactly what it is that they were looking for.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
And I always felt like when we went to like a nice office, like I don't know, Dollar Shave Club or something,
Hmm.
and they would have like the free food out.
Yeah.
I always
Oh man.
I always felt bad for taking it because I always felt like an imposter. So
You see, I
um,
had the opposite reaction. I was like, "Oh, good, free food. I'm gonna take as much of this as I can." Man, it must be great being a software developer. They've got so much money they can just give away all this food. I'm gonna stash a couple of these things.
oh yeah, yeah. Take a few samples. Take a few free samples.
Yeah, yeah. And take some stickers, things like that. You know, they want me to take those things. It's okay.
Yeah, yeah. Looking back now, it was such a it's such a good marketing strategy and also like a recruitment strategy
Oh
for them.
yeah, you get good labor, for cheap that way. Um, someone, you're giving someone a chance. They already love you for giving them a chance.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. They've already
So
sold you on their free pizza and
yeah,
free beer.
yeah, free beer. You know, those Mexican Cokes or whatever else they had in the fridge, kombucha.
Oh yeah, the kombucha fountains. Yeah,
Oh man, just kombucha on tap.
yeah. Those were good. Those were good. Those meetups. I don't know if they still exist, but I
Well,
hope they
I
do.
know. I mean, yeah, kind of. I mean, right now everything is locked down, so I don't know when people are going to be showing up again in person. But I mean, user groups are as old as Linux, so they've got to continue. Um,
It's true.
did you want to dive into some peer programming?
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
cool.
Let's do it.
So I'm gonna open up my uh, code editor here. I'm gonna share my screen. Let's go with share button. Okay, and you're seeing my screen now, right?
Yep.
Um, okay. So this is so when we were at Full Stack LA, we used to do this thing called exorcism.io. And it's a website where they issue challenges, and the challenges come as a test, just like with TDD, combined with a README. So we're going to try and do a little bit of pair programming on one of those. We have the resistor color one here in JavaScript. So let's open up that. See the README. So let's make this a little larger so that everyone can kind of see what's going on. That's a little too large. So Command Shift plus if you're on a Mac, or Command minus will make the whole thing larger or smaller. Very useful, especially if you're doing talks or things like that. All right. If you want to build something using a Raspberry Pi, which is a little bit of open source hardware, it's a $35 computer that you can buy. It's like a 2005 era computer, and it's about the size of a deck of cards. You'll probably use resistors. For this exercise, you'll need to know two things about them. Each resistor has a resistance value. The resistors are small, so small in fact that if you printed the resistance value on them, it would be hard to read. To get around this problem, manufacturers print color-coded bands on the resistors to denote their resistance values. Each band has a position and a numeric value. The first two bands of the resistor have a simple encoding scheme. Each color maps to a single number. In this exercise, you're going to create a helpful program so that you don't have to remember the values of the bands. These colors are as follows. Black is 0, brown 1, red 2, orange 3, yellow 4, all the way to white, which is number 9. And that's how many numbers there are, at least in base 10. The goal of this exercise is to create a way to look up the numerical value associated with a particular color band and to list the different band colors. Yeah.
The goal here is to we're gonna get this input.
We're going to, I believe what we're going to do is we're either going to give it numbers and it's going to tell us colors, or we're going to tell it colors and it's going to tell us what the number is. I don't know which at this point.
Okay.
Or maybe both. Let's look at this. Install dependencies. Looks like we're going to need to do an npm install. Let me make sure I'm in the right place. First of all, I'm in just the exorcism repo right now. I'm going to need to go into the JavaScript part. And then I'm going to need to go into the resistor color. Okay, cool. Here we are. From here, we can do an npm install. This is going to install any of the dependencies that this stuff needs. Probably going to be a test suite or a testing framework. Probably Jest.
It's all coming back to me now.
Yeah.
I remember like you got to, like once you completed one of these, you get to see other people's code and you just learn a lot from their solutions.
Yeah, and one of the cool things about it is that like when you complete them and then you see other people's solutions, you start to learn that there are so many different ways of solving the same problem. And then you start to develop opinions around which ways to solve a problem and how to go about doing that.
Yeah, because like some people do it in like one line, or they like do some weird method and like you're like, whoa, you could do that? That's cool.
Yeah. And then other times you would look at that one line and be like, I don't understand any of this. This is black magic. This is great so long as I only have to use it and I never have to modify it.
Yeah. You never have to read this again.
Right. Other like, yeah, there's this book that was recommended to me once called If Hemingway Wrote JavaScript, and it just had JavaScript written as if by different authors. So Jane Austen writing JavaScript, Hemingway writing JavaScript, Shakespeare writing JavaScript, and it went on like that. And they would write sort of similar functions, but they would have, there was all usable JavaScript, at least for its era. It was ES5 JavaScript.
Do you recommend that?
Xcode. What?
Xcode. Let's see. Jit failed Xcode 1.
Well, let's look that up. I don't know. This one?
Yeah, that one sounds good. No, that's good.
So this would reinstall Xcode for us. I'm surprised I need to do this right now.
Yeah.
I'm
Do you know
wondering
if...
whether or not it'll still run without it. It might.
It might, yeah.
Let's not go down this rabbit hole just yet.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Let's just try and see. So now let's try executing the tests and see what happens. If we did this right, we should get one failure, a bunch of skips, and that should be it.
Looks good. Looks like it's running.
One fail, 3 skips. That's exactly what we were expecting. So I'm thinking that we don't need to reinstall Xcode, even though Jip was complaining.
I think so.
Yeah, okay. So let's take a look at what that test is.
TDD.
Yeah. Here's our resistor color spec. Spec meaning specification. Spec is just another word for test. And it looks like we have our describe, and then we have xtest here, which means that we're skipping those. Then we have colors.
Oh.
Okay, so it looks like we have this. This is actually testing 2 things, right? Because we're going to import something called color code. And then we have this, and we're also going to test an implementation detail here, which is called colors. And this is going to house all of our colors. Does that seem right?
Yeah, it does.
So,
yep.
all right, so maybe let's do that first. Let's start with this one here, because I think this is going to be pretty easy to knock this one out. So we're going to ask something called colors about these things, and we're going to expect it to live inside of the resistorcolor.js file. Failed, right? It received undefined. Great. So it didn't receive what we were expecting it to receive. That's because we haven't written anything yet. So if we go to the resistor color, colors, undefined. Oh, look at that. I'm wondering whether I can do something like this. Copy. Paste.
Nice.
Run the test again. Sometimes it can, like, if you've written your tests well and you have a spec like that, you can actually just do stuff like that. Just copy it straight from, like, I was expecting to see this and it wasn't there. Well, now it is. Done. That's the whole thing. Do we want to? Is there any? Now we've gone from red to green to refactor. Is there any refactoring here necessary, or I don't know? Do you want these to be listed differently?
Do you ever care about like spacing? Like if it's too long of a line, you move it down.
It's a pretty long line, isn't it? I mean, that's I don't know exactly how many characters long, but that feels long to me. Does that feel long to you?
Yeah, it kind of does.
maybe then we can do something like this. And here's the great thing about having tests written this way. So now we have colors and inline. Save that. Run the test again. It'll pass. It should, unless I made a mistake someplace while I was refactoring. Because a little thing like, and it did pass, but if a little something like this might throw it off. Or actually, let's do something that still compiles. Let's just get rid of green. That's kind of appropriate. We're removing green, and the test will no longer be green. And this also proves that our test does exactly what it expects, what we hope it would. We made it fail, and it's definitely failing. This is a good test. Here it is. Expected this, received that. It received all these things, but it didn't receive green. Nice.
Nice. That's pretty smart too. Like, it knows exactly where it's like messing up.
Right. Okay. Well, we got the first part of this done. Our colors object and this is what kind of data type is this, by the way? So we've assigned this. We're going to export, which means that we're going to use this outside of this file, a constant set that's not going to change, and it's going to be called colors, all in caps. And we're going to assign this data type to it, and this data specifically in this type. What is this type?
An array.
Right. Okay. So it's an array. What's that mean? What's special about arrays?
You can enumerate through arrays.
Right. So
each element.
Yeah, each element. So in this case, each element in this array is, in other languages, arrays are called lists. And it depends on what programming language you're working with. And there's also a CS definition for what exactly is a list versus what is an array and how they're different. For JavaScript, I could call this a list if I wanted to. It more or less behaves the same way as a list would. But it's got an angle brace. No, this is just a brace. And then there's a brace at the other end, and each element inside of this list or this array is going to be the thing followed by a comma up until the last one. If we add a comma at the end here, this is still proper JavaScript. Some people hate this, some people love it. Sometimes the key thing is just working on the same side of the street. If you're expecting a list to keep growing, then you might do something like that. But if your list is continuing to grow, then you might want to find another way to refactor. So here we are with a list, right, of colors. Now, the thing that is not being shown here is how you would index each one of these. So like, how would you index yellow specifically and get the value of yellow from this colors?
Oh, you can use a method called index of.
Okay, so you could do index of yellow, right?
Index of yellow, yep.
And so it'll look for any, but that will probably return like the first one, right? So if we had yellow twice in here, then it would just return that one. What's kind of cool about this array is that everything is indexed by a number also. So if I was to do colors.1, it would show me brown. Colors.0 is black, so it's 0 index, so the first number is 0. Colors 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I bet that because of the way that this data structure is made, that when we go back and look at that README, it's going to do exactly that. Yeah, look at that. This is exactly it. Black is index 0. Brown index 1. This is going to make this so easy for us because of the fact that the code is already structured this way. So it looks like whoever wrote these tests thought of had an opinion about what way we should do this and thought this would be a really nice, simple way that we would just look things up off of this array. And the index number itself is the value, which is really kind of crazy. So that's kind of fun. So this might be elegant.
I can see it.
So here we have an export const color code, and we have remove this statement and implement. This is only provided as a convenience to writing code faster. I'm going to delete those comments because I don't need them anymore. Thank you, comments. So let's go ahead and start going through the tests and undoing a few of these. So when we type in color code black, we're going to expect that color codes is going to return 0. Oh, your index of thing might be exactly what's needed. So we have color code black. When we pass it in this value, it should return 0. So here's our color code. We need to, first of all, give it something to go in here. This is an argument that we're going to pass it, whereas right now it doesn't pass any arguments, but inside of these parentheses, that's where you would put whatever option you're going to give it. So we're going to call this, what's a good name for our argument here?
Color?
Color, okay. We're going to, color code takes a color and returns. Instead of throwing a new error, we're just going to, I guess this will technically pass it.
Oh, yeah.
So in this case, color code takes a color, immediately ignores that color, never uses it, and returns the number 0, which will pass this test. We're going to give it, color code is going to take a color, black, it's going to immediately ignore that color and return 0. Technically that works. Let's see if I'm right. Yeah, something failed.
Oh, I
didn't save. That's the reason why. Let's run it again. That proves that it was, yeah. Good. That proves that the test actually works.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that does technically work, but there's a better way to do this, isn't there? I guess we could either run the next test and let that fail and let that drive our development, or we could look at this code and just be like, this is obviously not the way we want to do this. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we could make it a little bit better.
Okay. How would we do that?
We could use our argument color and maybe somehow find that color in our constant array colors.
Colors dot, and you said index of, which it looks like my code editor, VS Code, is giving me that as an option. So if we did that, I mean, the syntax highlighting is saying that that's good. You think that, does that look right to you?
That looks good to me.
All right, let's run it and see. Oh boy, I think we might have done it. I think that might be it. That might be all we really need to do. We just do colors index of. So it's going to grab the index off of the value. So Kirk, you know about key value pairs, right?
Key value pairs. Yeah.
Okay. You want to explain what happens and why it is that we can do colors dot index of and pass it a color and what that means?
Um, I think an array for arrays in JavaScript, they have it, with it attached to it an index with it. So I guess when you said key value pairs, I was thinking the key could be the index, and the value could be the element itself.
Right. So the number 0 is the index for black, even though you're not seeing the number 0 here.
Exactly.
So in a sense, an array, from the point of view of a developer, an array is nothing more than an object that has a special kind of key that you don't get access to, that's just numbered from 0 ad infinitum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
All right, let's see if we're right about that, if we get any other fails going on here. Let's run all the tests. Let's be crazy about that. So white should be 9, orange should be 3. Now we're not testing every single thing here. These are just enough tests to imply that we did the right thing. We could go through and write a test for every single one of those colors. And in some cases, you might want to do that. In this one, every single thing passes. Because like the way that this, except because of the way that we've implemented it, that white color will fail if any of the values are not there or if there's an extra one. Orange would pass. The only way to make this pass and have it not be right would be to do something like this. Murder! Ugh. The task will still pass. So we could write a test for that. Oh no, it failed! Why did it fail? Why would that? Oh, look, because of our colors constant. This took care of all the others. Because it didn't find red, it found murder og. See? Had we not been testing that implementation detail, then that would have thrown us off.
Ah. Interesting.
Huh. All right, cool. Well, that was interesting to learn, is that whoever designed this little bit of code thought ahead of us. Nice of them.
I think if we went like test by test, we would have done, like if you were to do it, if you didn't have this array, how would you have done it?
Yeah, the most common way to do it would just be to start creating like this big, huge conditional chain of if this, return that, if else that, return that, else if this, return that, else if this, return that. And that's gross. I hate those. This is much nicer.
Definitely.
This is certainly cleaner than that. So, okay, cool. Well, that's it. We did it. We actually completed the whole thing. And we now have enough time to retrospect and think about what we did today. So I'm going to stop the sharing of the screen. Okay. Kirk, what did we learn today?
We learned about arrays and how they have an index attached to their elements, and you could easily you could find if you had the element as an argument, you could find the index of it with index of.
Yeah. And that there are times where you might be tempted to use a conditional statement of if this, then this, else if this, then that, else if this, then that, else if this, then that. And instead of doing that, we can use objects that have a key value pair, such as an array, or for that matter, an object, sometimes called a dictionary. A JSON object might be another way of doing that. And by using the methods that are provided by that type of data, you can make your code much cleaner and much easier to look at. So for example, in that code that we wrote, I'm going to show the audience real quick. This code has these colors, but if any of these colors at some point changed, we could change it right here and not have to go and hunt through this giant if-else-if block. And what if there's an extra color thrown in here? Well, if it turns out that they start doing hexadecimal and 16-point numbering instead of just 10-point, then we'd have to deal with extra colors. Or let's say that the human eye suddenly evolves to the point where it can see, it can see emotions, and they have their own shade of color that have nothing to do with any of these colors that we currently know about. Or they just, let's see, or we start seeing ultraviolet. We can add that in here, or we can add an infrared below brown if we wanted to. And not have to go hunting through this giant conditional statement and make sure that everything still works. It would be a lot easier. Not that it's likely that human eyes are going to evolve anytime soon to see emotions or, for that matter, to see into the infrared or ultraviolet spectrums. But if they did, our code would be able to be easily changed and understood. To be like, oh, this is the old code, back when they only saw this many colors.
Yeah, that's true.
So it'll make a future developer very happy to look at that and be like, I know how to deal with this.
Yeah. Readability is something super important, I feel like, for developers, because I kind of wanted to touch upon this. I don't know if we have time.
Did you want to do any refactoring of that code?
We could. Did you want to do that instead?
No, you said you wanted to. Was there a point that you wanted to make though?
Oh yeah, because I think we both came from humanity majors.
Yeah.
I might be wrong.
No, you're English and I'm theater.
Yep. And you probably got this question before, like, how did you transition from theater to coding, and like, what brought you to coding?
Uh-huh.
And I was just going to point out that, like, it's very similar to like writing an essay a little bit, and the methods, the naming that you do are really important to developers to read your code and like understand what's going on, and it makes a big difference, I feel like.
Yeah. I studied a bit of East Asian poetry, before I started learning software. Haiku or Chinese jueju, if I'm pronouncing it right. Those forms are very succinct, but they are designed to choose just the right words to transmit an intention or a feeling or an attitude with very little. And that is a lot of times when I'm writing software or I'm writing names for things, I'm trying to think of like, what's going to evoke exactly what this thing is and nothing else.
Yeah. And that's like, would you say that's
like 90% of the work a little bit, like naming or structuring it to be succinct and
Yeah.
figuring the right names.
I mean, sure. Like the compiler will allow a lot of different things to work, but the words are there so that you can more easily get in and change it. Otherwise, you have to spend a whole lot of time trying to figure it out. I mean, technically, you could program, talking about the old XKCD cartoon. It's like real editors or real programmers use different editing tools, and then someone says like real programmers use a magnetized needle and a steady hand. It's like, yeah, you could do that. You could try to program that way, but you lose the value of having words. And one of the big, huge advantages that human beings have over lots and lots of other existing objects in this universe, be it whether they are living or non-living, plant or animal, we have this thing called words. And we can use those words to get a handle on what it is that we're trying to manipulate. And so that's all that we're creating. We're creating good handles so that we can more easily get in and change things.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you can think of it like with cars, for example. Like there are cars that it's very easy for you to change the battery in it. There are other cars that you have to remove the transmission in order to change the battery because everything is so tightly compacted in there. Sure, it's very efficient for the engine. It's impossible for anyone to service it.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Or even worse, with software, you can do crazy things. You can put the transmission into the tire treads, for example.
You could, yeah.
Yeah. So part of using words allows you to go like, oh, this is a transmission. This should have nothing to do with the tire tread. Let's separate that out. It helps you write cleaner code if you're using words.
Exactly. And I like the car analogy because cars are very complicated.
Yeah.
But once you like figure out the sections of it and name it properly, you could eliminate that complexity and just focus on certain parts of it.
It's like, yeah, that's the transmission. I don't need to know about the transmission right now. One of my tires are flat.
Exactly, yeah. Saves a lot of time for developers.
Yeah.
For bugs.
It also means that you don't need to understand the entire system in order to do anything with the system, because the systems get way more complex than what any one person can do with it. Like, even the simplest thing, in software terms. Facebook, I'm sure, for example, has like several odd million lines of code, right? No one at Facebook understands that whole system. Zoom, which is the tool that we're using right here, that has its own set of code that goes along with it, and no one at their shop knows every line of that code either. They know the parts that they're concerned with, and they optimize those parts, and there are other people whose job it is to combine those parts but not necessarily understand the details. And because of that, we can put together these really, really interesting, very useful, complex systems. For that matter, the editor that we're using right now, VS Code, is like that. For that matter, so is OBS, the software that is streaming this out to Twitch. For that matter, so is Twitch. So it's just like no one could ever possibly understand this whole system of how this all works. But because of naming things, we can get in and make useful changes to the code. And create things that are vastly more complex than what one person could ever hope to hold in their head.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what's so cool about code. I mean, like I don't know, actually. Working in software, I feel like it's all about structure and design a little bit.
Yeah. Because and what's also trippy is that every line of code that was written by someone. Every single one of those was a decision someone made. And so if you're feeling pain from the software that you're working with, there's no one else to blame but us for that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's not like some magical, machine spirit someplace out there, wrote this stuff down and now we have to suffer through it because of that. No, we did this to ourselves.
That's true. Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
also
And we,
implies, that we are the ones who can fix it.
that's true. Yeah. That's a lot of power.
Yeah.
Like if we don't like a tool, we could totally rewrite it. Do it
Yeah.
ourselves.
So that's the power involved with, why it is that I wanted to develop software, because you really can influence the world, maybe in a small way, but, if you do it and everyone else does it, you're changing that world. The world's going to be what we code it to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Was there something you wanted to build that drew you to programming that you kind of have in the back of your mind?
Well, I saw the show on Twitch a long time ago, and it was called Critical Role. And it's the kind of show that they play Dungeons and Dragons on. And it was inspiring to me because I was like, oh, this is like so much fun. It's like hanging out with your friends. It's, you felt connected to other people. You felt like, the values of friendship and adventure and, meaningful trust with just enough psychological safety that you're playing a character rather than, this is me exposing myself to everybody. That I was like, wow, that would be really cool if I could do something with that. So in a sense, doing this show, doing software, showing this stuff to people is kind of my way of doing something along those lines. I don't really know if I properly described that, but yeah, a little bit.
I think so. Yeah. And this show seems to kind of, build the community and bring new engineers into the field. So it's,
Yeah.
I can totally see it.
Well, I mean,
It's like,
the people at the meetups were so nice to me. It would seem a shame for me not to do the same to people who are coming in after me. Otherwise, it's sort of like I'm going back in time and denying myself an education. Every time I see someone new who wants to learn about software, I'm really teaching myself from a few years ago.
oh, interesting.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. Huh. I should do something similar. I want to do something similar.
Well, I mean, you kind of are. Here you are. Thank you.
Oh yeah, that's true. Huh.
Yeah. So we're towards the end of the show. So I do have a couple of questions for you. Kirk, having taught yourself software engineering from being an English major, I have two questions for you. First of all, what do you think is the most important thing about being a software developer, about software?
Can I answer that with I guess in practical sense? I do feel like, since we talked about readability a little bit and the importance of that, I think that's super important. I think as we were learning, we kind of just wanted to get it to work and get it to do what we wanted to do. But as you work more with a team and do open source projects, I feel like readability, naming, and structuring your code is pretty important to focus on. Yeah, that makes, I don't know if that made any sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, name things well. Use your words.
Yeah. Yeah. But your question was kind of getting into programming, like
Yeah, yeah.
someone.
Actually, that was my second question I wanted to ask you. So the second question is, uh, if I am an English major or a theater major or someone who is not normally involved with tech, and I wanted to get involved in it, what's the first thing that I would that you'd recommend I do to start down that path?
Um, if I was just testing the waters a little bit, I
Mm-hmm.
would probably try out a tutorial, like a basic HTML tutorial, and and try to build something very simple. Um, but also like our path of like going to meetups and meeting people who are also working on software and studying software. That's tremendously helpful because you're kind of like lost in sea at the beginning, and so these people you meet will just bring you closer to the shore. Um, yeah, so it's really important to find people to work with and also a community to talk about it with. Um, it just keeps you sort of on track and yeah, on track really. Plus, I don't know if you would agree with this, but I think software is a little bit isolating at times.
Oh yeah.
So, the funnest part about the meetups was like you get to like work with people and see people doing the same thing you're doing. And um, it just made it so much more fun, I felt like.
Yeah, I agree. Um, well,
So,
I think that's a great note to end the show on. I have a few people to thank. My production liaison is Matt Pittner. Designer is Aaron Harvey. He has a show on Outpost 13 called Infinite Trek, where he talks about all things related to Star Trek. Right now, they're going through Star Trek Discovery. Then Lucas Vanosic is my marketer, and he is on a show called Two Liars, which is tomorrow. That's a game show where two teams of people there are three on each team. One of those people is telling the truth. The other two are making up a story, and the other team has to figure out who's lying and who's telling the truth, and that's really fun. Then my botmaster is Cody Bushy, and he has a show called An Actor Unprepared, and he brings together a working actor, a working director, and a writer, and he has all three of them work on a monologue right there on the spot where none of them know the material or who they're working with, and so they put together a little tiny snippet of a story during the show, which is really cool. Music that you heard pre-stream and what you're going to hear after the stream is by Arlo Sanders and Alex Kahn, and they have a show that is currently on hiatus called Meetup Music, and you can find their music that they made right here on the channel on Spotify. Just look up Made Up Music there. Before we go, Cody Bushy has a question for you, Kirk.
yeah.
So when you say something, okay, so I'm not sure I have the context of this anymore. Ah, darn. Cody Bushy says, Kirk, when you say something simple, can you give an example? Do you know what he meant by that?
I guess I can't. Let's see. I don't. I think about the part about readability.
Oh, about creating something with HTML. So if you were going to
Oh,
something simple, what do you mean by something simple?
okay. Yeah, like designing up a profile, a static profile. I think that was one of the first tutorials I did was creating a profile of yourself on a web page.
Oh yeah, like using GitHub Pages to make like a little resume of yourself and then host that as a web page.
Yeah, like make it official, like you're in
Yeah.
software and you have your own profile page.
Yeah. Or, how, you just love cats or whatever. I've seen people do things like that.
Yeah, and like they do fun animations with cats flying through the
Yeah.
website. Like those were always fun to
Yeah.
build.
When I was in a meetup, they, my mentor gave me something that was a little bit more complicated, which was to use JavaScript to make a map of the LA area and put on that map all the meetups that were tech meetups and where they were located on the map.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So that's a slightly more complicated version, but yeah, for the first thing, yeah. A web page, a static web page, not one that has like forms or like, data that's coming from a back end someplace, or like, the current player stats of the 1982 Philadelphia Eagles. I don't know why that would be current now, but you get the idea. Keep it
Yeah.
really, really simple. The simpler, the better.
Exactly. And I think once you feel comfortable getting off tutorials, building things like I used to build things with friends where we just like when we were learning React, we would just do like a button on one side and a light bulb, or like a color box on the other side,
Uh-huh.
and just have that button switch the colors on the box.
Right. Or a dice roller program, like you click the button and then it gives you a random number on the other side.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
Yeah. So, yeah. So those are examples, Cody. Thanks for the question. All right. Well, we're a little over time, but it was fun. Thank you, Kirk, so much for coming on the show. It was so good to see you again. We've been both so focused on career stuff that we don't go out to meetups anymore.
Yeah, it's a shame. I hope one day we can like go back and like I don't know, maybe we can like host one someday and bring that kind of community back to LA.
Yeah, that would be great. That would be just lovely. Well, in the meantime, we've got this show, and who knows what else is out there. Okay, that's the end of the show. I'm going to go ahead and make an awkward exit like we normally do in the end of a Zoom call in software. I'm not sure how many of those you've had, Kirk, but I've had quite a few awkward ends. So.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna go now. Good seeing you. I'll see you tomorrow or sometime.
Okay, I'll see you later, Ian.
See ya.
Take care. Bye.
Oh yeah, we still have the sound up. Hold on. Oh wait. Okay, I think I got it now.
He only steps up steps too high. I'm just a man. If you see my face at your hour of death, don't shake. Don't shake in your boots, no, don't you fret. Cause I'm gonna take you down where the beats are pumping. Down to hell where the lava's jumping. In the mountain, lava's jumping. Down to hell where the lava's jumping.
Let yourself fall, cause you'll only get higher. Let yourself drop like a beat on fire. Living half dead, so you might as well drop. The f***ers can't find you, the beat don't stop. The beat don't stop. It'll never stop.
I walk this life. The only steps I make. Steps too high. I'm just a man. I walk this life. The only steps I make. Steps too high. I'm just a man.
When you start Zen, a mountain is a mountain, a river is a river. But learning Zen, a mountain is not a mountain, a river is not a river. After learning Zen, a mountain is a mountain,